This is for Leah.
I once claimed that I would never, ever write another single damn poem about poetry. And I swear to you tonight that this is not that. Well, what this is a prelude to a prologue, which is a very fancy way of saying, you should have seen my nightstand. It was this enormous monument constructed from the vast deposits of your literata, immersed in absinthe and pheromones I swear I could smell across an entire continent. Seriously, skyscraper mags and high-rise zines scaled to their peaks, each and every tower replicating the DNA spiral to the very tipping point of full nightstand capacity, where every night we would come tumbling down into that sea of starlight, where we imagined ourselves clean once again. But I always was that wraith you meant to make out of me, dreamed in the back room of a doomed strategic air command outpost in the neon Babylon, where a half-century's worth of nicotine ghosts congeal their shimmering black mildewed lakes of Cold War madness, perfectly affixed to the inside of light bulb fixtures, the smell of rain and the desperation for touch emanating from each noxious ripple, unknowing of language, knowing only the shuffle of the rhythm of the all of you, singing our forever deep reaching underneath. None of this would be purgatory if we didn't keep coming back here over and over to do the dance of decay. Unless you start to think that this is a poem about poetry, I assure you that we have only arrived at the prologue for a prologue, appropriately entitled, "The appearance of design necessarily infers the design of appearance." That is to say, these tools, these devices, these mechanisms that we've all come to fetishize in these fucking MFA programs have themselves become rendered into patterns of a rush and a push, and the loved ones we have stood upon will be ours then, won't they? But this style of treachery has become quite exhausted, and never more tired than after all of these festivals, these monstrous exhibitions and peacock fanning marathons, the kind of exhausted that dispenses with any need for carnal knowledge and barely bothers with a hug and a pet on the cheek, all in the name of preventing the inevitable overtaking of all of us by sandworms formed of laughing sand. And none of us escapes those sandworms. No one escapes that laughter. None of us escapes that sand. And I cannot sleep. And I realize I can never sleep on those nights before the day that you fly so far, far away from me. And so in this frozen, lightless morning, your lovely oval face melting into the pillow, the forever furrow in your brow becoming ether, your translucent truth radiating in this darkest of darks, and the last memory of anything worth living for clings by the merest hangnail to the wall tissues of the cosmic uterus, more desperately than any creation we have born up until this moment. And up until this moment, and up until this moment, and only the invisible qualities have remained, Charlie fucking Getter. Now, because he's here, I will say that we have arrived, ladies and gentlemen, at the portion of this evening's literary exercise where an actual poem about poetry would be located if this were in fact a poem about poetry, instead of an overtly self-conscious layering of qualifications that I have so cleverly lured all of you into. But since we have all consensually agreed that there will be no more poems about motherfucking poetry, then you must simply take it on good faith. You must take my hand and follow me deeper into this labyrinth. Oh, Don't you play with me, boy, she kept asking in my direction. Truth is desire. Truth is pain. Separate these things, but not now. No, not here. No, none of us here wants to see the truth as its true self, because the reminder is far too painful. The giving, the betraying, the killing. How could any of this ever be a holy land? How could any of this ever be poetry other than a simple epilogue for a prologue, where everything means anything, no matter how in and out of fashion the variations on this trope happen to be, because any and all civilizations have been capable of creating a jihad out of any vile reason pulled out of anyone's ass. The choice to choose that remaining ever ours. The choice to pretend anything. And why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't you? Well, okay, let's begin with moisture. The moisture carried in our precious bodily fluids. What is it that we give away our most precious bodily fluids for? Those things that are most valuable and most precious to the giver. And we can say that entire meta-universes, entire meta-realities are encapsulated in the trails of moist that run down the cheeks of the mammal in a cold, lightless morning. And if you can empirically disprove this, perhaps then you and I can be in dialogue. But until then, our teeth are coated in such things that burn faster than the speed of thought. Why wouldn't we stop playing with Prometheus matches? Not knowing what's on the other side, but knowing simply that there is another side. So go ahead, fumble with them. Your fingers will always be furious with this fire, no matter how many times you burn out, no matter how many times your dust coats my teeth. And so we arrive at the afterword for an epilogue. Oh, and I can feel the hardening in your stance, in your protest, in your prone, and in your pull. I don't always want soft. I need you. In that smallest singularity of the Shiva fold, you will always find me hustling for the backstage pass, just to get that tiny peek behind the curtain, just to have the memory of that scent, just for that pungent taste of the dark soupy matter that's inside all of us, that we pull out, only to discover that it's a flimsy blanket woven from the mirrors we draw overhead that turn into the rivulets that run, the rivulets of cold, crystal clear starlight that run down the heavy frames of our spines, calling us back to a dance set to music with no sound that never repeats, but is always familiar. Between this divining and between this archiving, there is only this soupy muddle that is called us. And I am so, so sorry. I never promised that this would all turn out the way that we meant it to. The alternative to poems about poetry, I mean. Ooh.